Hello, my name is Frédéric Mérand. I'm a professor of political science at Université de Montréal, and I'm also deputy director of the European Union Centre of Excellence in Montreal. My current work deals with Canada and European countries, and the question that I ask is, how do they share the burden of global governance? Whether we think about deploying a military operation such as in Libya, sending development aid in countries of the global south, or fighting climate change, the question is always, how do governments decide how much each will contribute to what? So these are what we call public goods. The decisions that governments make are very important. They're important policy decisions, but they're also very important from a political point of view because these different goods tend to produce what we call free-riding problems, whereby some governments believe in fighting the public good, but basically they're not willing to contribute as much as the others. And the problem becomes that if nobody contributes, then you can't really procure, you can't supply the public good, and that becomes a problem of global governance. So I've been looking at how countries like Canada, the US, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, and Britain, but also the EU as an organization, have been dealing with these problems. And what I'm trying to find out is basically how do these different countries decide how much they're going to contribute, especially looking at peace operations. So there are different possible explanations. One is that these governments are driven by norms, that they actually believe in it, and that they will do it out of moral reasons. A second explanation is that they do it because they pursue their self-interest. They think they're going to get something out of it. A third explanation is that the institutional design of global governance will make some countries contribute more than others, or all countries contribute on some issues and not on others. So for example, if we compare NATO, the European Union, the UN, or the IMF, we see that they have different decision-making rules that basically make countries more or less likely to try and contribute to the public good. A fourth explanation is culture. Maybe some countries are just more likely to contribute to public goods, such as peace operations, and others aren't. And finally, the fifth explanation that I'm interested in is basically domestic politics. Are certain domestic structures more likely to convince their governments or force their governments to contribute to public goods? So, of course, if we get the right answers to these questions, it should be possible to design international institutions that will be fairer, in the sense that all governments will contribute their fair share, but also more efficient, in the sense that these public goods will be easier to reach than without these institutions. So, what have I found so far? Well, first of all, that it's a lot more complicated than most people think. In all these debates, there's a very strong tendency on the part of governments, and Canada is one example, but if we think of other European countries, we find the same kinds of debates where each government and each country thinks that they're doing more than the others, and therefore they blame the others for not doing their fair share. They blame them for free riding. In reality, it's a lot more complicated than this for different reasons. First of all, institutions do matter. So for example, if we look at international military operations, we observe that NATO is more efficient than the EU in terms of convincing member states to send enough troops and enough military capabilities to a theater of operations, such as in Afghanistan or in Libya. Why is that? Well, probably because NATO as an institution has devised a certain number of carrots and sticks that basically make it more profitable or more convincing for governments to contribute to an operation. And what's behind these rules is, of course, the role of the US, which is capable of telling different countries, if you don't do it, then there'll be bad consequences, and if you come, there'll be good consequences. So in that sense, institutions really matter for burden sharing. Another finding that comes from exploring the Scandinavian case is the role of domestic politics. So for example, we see that in countries that have social democratic governments or that have a social democratic tradition, there's a greater emphasis placed on development aid. The idea is that, you know, if you're a socialist government, you should emphasize development aid rather than military operations. By contrast, countries that have a stronger right-wing or conservative traditions, or when the conservative party is in power, will emphasize military operations. So what this has as a result is that left-wing governments tend to contribute more than the others when it comes to development assistance or fighting climate change, whereas countries that have right-wing governments tend to under-contribute when it comes to development aid, but over-contribute when it comes to military contributions, for example, to NATO. But in general, what I find the most interesting in studying these processes is that social representations of justice are very different from one country to another. So in some countries, there is this sort of Kantian categorical imperative whereby policy leaders think that their country should do something because they expect others to do something as well, and therefore they take the lead. In other countries, there's a tendency to follow the others, to wait for the others to contribute before they commit to any kind of contribution, whether we're talking about, again, climate change or peace operations. So in general, what we find is that the question is not so much who is the free rider, who's not doing their fair share, because if we look at different areas of global governance, actually you will find that countries do better or worse on each of these different areas or dimensions. So for example, the Scandinavian countries are very good with development aid, but they contribute less to military operations. The UK and France contribute more to military operations, but less to development aid or to fighting climate change. And in that respect, Canada is sort of in between. It's never one of the biggest contributors, but it's never one of the worst either.